Well, hello everyone. This is week number 3 of this microeconomics seminar. We are going to focus on 4 topics today, and the 4 are topics that probably you have your own intuitions. And the interesting thing is that today you will see like different models, econometric models, that will help you to understand, confirm, or change your intuitions. The first topic is about international trade, whether it is good or bad, who are the winners and losers. This is a very compressed view at international trade. The normal understanding is that international trade is beneficial for a country, in the sense that if this is the situation of a country without a trade, without international trade, you have here the demand and you have the supply of textiles, for example, and this is the quantity of textiles. So this is the equilibrium. Consequently, all of this is the consumer surplus. Remember that surplus means that if this is the price, the equilibrium price, the potential buyers are willing to pay more, so consequently they are receiving all of this and they are paying only for this. So consequently all this triangle is the consumer surplus. Regarding the producer surplus, remember that the blue line is the cost for the producer, and this is what they receive, this is the price. So consequently this triangle is the producer surplus, because they are receiving more than their cost. So this is the total surplus for the entire sector, if you want, consumers and producers. What happens when you incorporate trade? Let's analyze first the exporting country. When you trade, what basically happens in an exporting country is that the country, this is the domestic market, and they export products for this price. The international price is higher than the domestic price. So this is the benefit of trade, is that they can export for a better price than in the domestic market. So consequently, if this was the market before trade, the price, this is the price with trade. So consequently, what happens with the consumer surplus? Well, now they pay this price, and this is what they were supposedly willing to pay. So consequently, this small A triangle is the consumer surplus. You realize the consumer surplus is lower than before. What happens with the producer surplus? Producer surplus, if this is the price, the red line, and the blue line is the cost, so the producer surplus now is substantially bigger. So all these CBD triangle is the surplus for the exporting country, so for the producers. So consequently, as a whole, the nation benefits, because you have this extra D triangle, that is a surplus that before were not considered. So it's good for the entire nation. What happens for the importing country? For the importing country, the situation is different, because supposedly the importing country is more inefficient in producing textiles. So the price before trade, with no trade, would be this price here. And with trade, supposedly the foreign country, the exporter, is more efficient. So consequently, this will be the price of the imports. So this is clearly a lower price. And this quantity here is the total amount of imported products. So see what happens with the consumers. The consumers now, if they are willing to pay this price, and they end up paying this red line, this price, so all this triangle A, B, and D, this big triangle here, is the total consumer surplus. So this is, you see that they are substantially better. What happens with the local producers? Local producers, now they have a lower price. So if this is the cost, their producer surplus is substantially smaller than before. So the consumers win, the local producers lose, but the entire nation wins, because the total surplus for both consumers and producers are better off. So you see that the conclusion with international trade is that it is beneficial for both nations, the exporting and the exporter. However, if you look in detail, you will see that even though the entire exporting and importing countries are better off, there are sectors that have more have gains and losses, if you want. So this is the conclusion. What happens when the importing country establishes a tariff? So consequently, this is the price without tariff. This is the graph that we saw before. And with a tariff, you have to pay a higher price, so the consumer have to pay a higher price. So consequently, with the tariff, you see that the consumer surplus that initially was this big triangle that I'm marking here, with a tariff, the triangle gets a little bit smaller than before. So there is the consumers suffer because of the tariff. Compared with the free trade, with a tariff, free trade is restricted, and consumers suffer because of the tariff. What happens with the producers? Well, the producers, they continue having their benefit as before. That is basically this small triangle here. It all depends who pays the tariff. If the tariff is paid only by the consumers, they can have this extra benefit, if you want. So somehow they are having a protection, so they are paying a higher price. So this triangle GC is the producer surplus, so they are a little bit better off. And the government is also better off because they receive this E rectangle in tariffs. It's like a tax. So consequently, consumers lose, producers win, and government wins. However, there are two small triangles that don't benefit anyone, the triangle D and the triangle F. So they both are welfare laws, dead weight laws, if you want. So they don't benefit anyone. So you can have a picture of what are the winners and losers with tariffs. So as you see, although there are winners and losers, there are other benefits of trade. In addition to the benefit for the entire exporters and importers, for the nation, there are other benefits. There is an increase in the variety of goods. So now you have more possibilities for the consumers. Lower cost through economies of scales. So since the exporting country has a larger resource base, consequently will have and is selling to more consumers, consequently will have economies of scales, which is better for whoever gets the benefit of these economies of scales. There's more competition, and there is also a no. Yes. Okay, so what are the reasons then to restrict free trade? Okay, number one is the argument of the jobs. Trade with other countries destroy domestic jobs. Reality is that it is true that destroys, but creates and probably more. So it's not necessarily true. Yes, some jobs are destroyed, but some others and probably more are created. The national security argument, the industry is vital for the national security, like airlines or this kind of stuff. Well, this can be, or this may not be. It depends. You have to analyze one by one. The next is the infant industry argument, that this is a small industry, it has to be protected until it's able to compete. This is kind of difficult to implement, because how do you define when this industry really becomes an adult industry and not an infant? So may never happen, may continue being protected forever and continue being infant forever. Probably is for the the industry may decide to remain infant, so it keeps receiving the protection. And remember that also someone is paying for that protection, so the consumers are paying a higher price because of this tariff, because of this protection. Once you have this protection, it's not so easy to get rid of, and so it doesn't necessarily help the. Probably will not. Other arguments is the unfair competition, and this is a real argument. This unfair competition is a real argument in the sense that you can have international monopolies, and international monopolies may destroy local producers, and this can produce an unfair situation. And finally, the protection as a bargain chip argument is a way to negotiate between two countries. If I protect myself, the other country protects herself or whatever, so consequently this may be bad for everyone. So this is kind of a tit for tat. Okay, so let's talk about the next discussion today, that is the concept of externalities. Externality is the uncompensated impact of one person's action, the person that makes an economic decision, on the well-being of the bystanders, of the rest of the community. This is what's called market failure. So it's something that someone does that may produce an effect on others. Can be a negative effect or can be a positive effect on the bystander. Okay, so let's see, for example, the market for aluminum. So you have, as always, the price, you have the quantity, and you have the demand and the supply. So what happens when this industry produces pollution in the rivers or in the air or whatever? Okay, someone has to pay for that pollution. So there is a cost of producing aluminum plus a cost of the pollution, or controlling the pollution or getting rid of the pollution. It produces a cost in the society. So the total cost is not this cost, the total cost is this cost, and part of this cost is absorbed by the rest of the community, by the government, by the society, by way of health, lack of health, or pollution or whatever. But there are also positive externalities. For example, if a private university teaches the students, this education benefits the students and benefits the rest of the community, because the students go to the external world and they produce benefit that goes to the entire community. So there is a social value, if you want, that benefits everyone. Okay, so what happens when the government wants to control the negative externalities? So the negative side of externalities. One is to establish a tax. So the tax in this case is this total amount, and when you establish the tax, you realize how much pollution you are producing. Eventually, you can raise the tax as much as you eliminate completely the pollution. So there is this like trade-off. You have to define exactly how much pollution the country is willing to take. Another way is to establish not a tax but a quantity of pollution. Say, okay, we allow you to produce such and such level of pollution. Society can take this level of pollution, and based on this, the price of pollution comes out of this equation. Okay, next topic is about public goods and common resources. What is this? So you see here in this chart what is public goods and common resources. You see that here. What is the definition? Okay, there is two aspects. Aspect number one is the concept of excludability. That it means that excludability means that the good is excludable if people can be prevented from using it. So you have some control to avoid that some people use it. There are some products that are excludable. So if you sell an ice cream, you can decide, I sell it to you or I don't sell it to you. Clothes, whatever, fire protection, cable, whatever. So it means that somehow you can control that not everyone can use it. Some other cases they cannot be excluded. For example, water, air, roads, or national defense. So everyone benefits by these products. This is the first concept. The second concept is rival of consumption. That is, a good is rival in consumption if one person's use of the good diminishes other person's use of it. So in this case, you have like two alternatives. That is the one that we are discussing. Common goods. It means that when someone is using these resources, common resources. Someone is using these resources, is preventing other people from using it. So there is a rivalry. So if I eat the fish of the ocean, someone else cannot eat it because I am the one that is taking it, or I use the environment, so I take the natural resources. Someone else cannot do it. Public goods is different. Public goods is something that there is no rivalry. For example, if you have a national defense is for the entire population. There's no rivalry about it. So let's talk about these topics. What happens with public goods and common resources? Regarding public goods, the key issue is the concept of free rider. That is, so someone is getting a benefit without paying for it. So and there is no way you can do, because everybody has access, let's say, to the national security. So the point is that how can the government remedy the free rider? So when the government is incurring in a cost and some people are using it, like whatever. So a freeway that okay, you can put a toll and then you can control it. In some cases you can, some cases you cannot control it. This gives you an idea of different public goods. For example, national defense. So the government deploys some strategies, right, to national defense and benefit the entire community. Basic research. There's a lot of research that is led by the government or by public, by particular people like universities, whatever, and benefit the entire community. Fighting poverty. So you see there are a lot of initiatives that are led by someone, can be government or private people or companies or whatever, and benefit the entire community. So the point is that how can the government measure or what is the cost-benefit analysis? It's not so easy to measure what are the benefits. The cost probably yes, but what are the benefits that someone, or the cost of negative externalities, if you want. Okay, remember that we discussed in this chart, at the right was the public goods and at the left was common resources. Okay, so the common resources are rival in consumption. So public goods are good for everyone, but common resources, if one member, for example, you exhaust all the fishes in the ocean, okay, so nobody else will be able to catch new fishes. So this is a rivalry on the resources. The bad news is that the person that typical case is the exhaustion of natural resources, the sustainability discussion that we are hearing every day. So that probably for one company it's good to exhaust all one specific material, natural resource, without considering what is the cost for the rest of the society. Probably let's say titanium. So one firm uses all the titanium in the planet, and so for the next generation nobody else will have titanium. So this is very difficult to manage. Some resources, clean water, clean air and water, congested roads, same considerations as we saw before: fishes, whales, wildlife, and the discussion is always the same. How can you measure exactly what is the cost? How can you measure how to find a balance, etc. This is an interesting discussion. Okay, the last topic of today is the cost of production. You have all the costs at the end are opportunity costs, in the sense that you can use your resources for something or for something else. The big divide is whether they are explicit or implicit costs. So explicit costs are the typical costs that you consider, so the money that you have to spend on something. But implicit costs are money is not money that you have to spend. For example, implicit cost is, for example, if I am dedicating my time to develop this class now, this video, okay, I am not using my time to do something else. I could make more or less money, doesn't matter, but or doing the dishes. If I spend time doing the dishes, I'm not producing. So I'm not making money. This is when opportunity cost is when you allocate your resources for something and you give up something else. Like Bill Gates, he can type his letters, and probably he can do it extremely well. But while he types his letters, he's not producing new contracts or new deals, whatever. So consequently, the cost can be very high. This is the implicit cost, and this is, as I mentioned, complex to measure. One very important concept is the concept of cost of capital, because in the cost of capital you have implicit cost. For example, if you invest in shares of a company ABC, you are not investing in shares of the company XYZ. So if the shares of the company ABC yield like 10% per year, and the shares of the company XYZ yield like have a profitability of 30%, okay, investing in the company ABC making 10%, you are not making 30%. So the implicit cost is the 30% that you are not making. So this is the concept of opportunity cost that you have to consider. The same as Bill Gates, that is not closing mega contracts for millions of dollars because he's typing letters. So what is the cost for Bill Gates of typing a letter? Okay, it's not $100 or $200. That is the cost of a typical a typer. The cost is probably $1 billion because it's not closing a mega deal for typing that letter. So this is the difference between economic profit and accounting profit. Accounting profit is what you see in your accounting. It's only explicit cost. It means money outlays. So money spent, but economic profit considers implicit cost. So like Bill Gates, the cost of typing a letter is not the cost of the letter, of the paper or whatever. The cost is the $1 billion that is not making because of spending time typing the letter. Okay, economic profit is completely different from accounting profit. Economic profit is more conceptual, more strategic. Accounting profit is more practical, more concrete, money that you practically spent. And based on this, you have like two different views. The economist considers economic profits as explicit cost, implicit cost. So revenue minus explicit cost, and implicit cost is economic profit. So it's considering implicit cost. So the cost, as I said, not using the money for something else. However, the accountant has a more simple view, that is the revenue, money, is minus cost, money outlays, so the expenses or costs or whatever. That is the accounting profit. So you see, the accounting profit is radically different from the economic profit. You use both in strategy if you want in the business world. However, this is more strategic, this is more practical. Okay, so based on this, you can consider what are your costs, and based on this, you can start graphing the production function, and based on this, you'll get into several considerations. What is the production function? Relationship between the inputs and the outputs. Okay, here you see both definitions. At the left, you see the production function that basically you put here in the vertical axis the output, what the company produces, and in the horizontal axis you put the input. What is the input, like raw materials, numbers of workers hired, etc., etc. So whatever you use as input, gasoline, electricity, whatever. So you have like you can put anything here. And so what you see here is that you have this this graph, that you see that at first the output grows in proportion of the input, but then it starts getting like more horizontal. It means that you continue spending inputs, if you want, or invest in inputs, whatever, and the outputs are not as don't grow at the same speed, so they grow slower, if you want, which means that the company becomes less efficient. Imagine that you are in a room. You have one sewing machine with one worker. Okay, imagine that you have only one sewing machine, and instead of having one worker, you put two workers. Okay, that's fine. You can have one worker working during the day and the other at night. Then you put three workers. Well, it gets a little bit more complicated. You produce more, but there seems to be some overlapping. They start bothering each other. Let's say you have 6 workers. You have only one sewing machine, and you have only one day. So clearly they start bothering each other. So the level of production doesn't really increase, and there's one point where it stops increasing, and they start really bothering each other. The production goes down instead of going up, because clearly you have conflicts. Imagine you have 100 guys for only one sewing machine. That's a mess, you see. So this is what happens with the production function. Here you have the cost, and you have a fixed and variable cost. Fixed cost $30 is the fixed cost, and this is going to stay forever. And then you start adding variable costs. It means you put here the output, and you put here the cost, and you see that as the output grows, you have a variable cost that grows and grows even more and more and more, and the company becomes more inefficient. Exactly the example that I mentioned you with the workers, with the one single machine. Each worker is more variable cost, more hours, and if you have 100 workers, you see that the only thing you are adding is cost, but output doesn't grow. So somehow these curves they have some sort of working together, if you want. And here you have the entire picture that you need to build that chart. So that chart is built based on these numbers here. So you increase the number of workers here from 0 worker, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the output, if you have 0 worker, so nobody produces, so the output is 0. If you have 1 worker, produces 50. 2 workers becomes less efficient, produce 90, not 100. So you think, okay, if 1 worker produces 50, 2 workers produces 100. No, because they start bothering each other. So you start having this kind of conflicts, overlappings, so that the company is not as efficient with 2 workers. Okay, you continue. Then you have marginal product of labor. Okay, this is the marginal product of labor. So remember, marginal means that each new unit that you add of input, what happens with the output. So you see here that if you have 1 extra worker, it produces 50. That is what you have here. The second worker produces only 40. The third worker produces 30, the difference between 90 and 120. The fourth worker produces 20, the difference between 120 and 140, you see. So this is what is called marginal product of labor. So each new additional worker is producing less than the workers before because they start bothering each other. What happens with the cost? Okay, so the cost, you see that the fixed cost is the same. The cost of factory is the fixed cost. It's the same all over. It doesn't matter how much you produce or how many workers do you have. Even if you don't have any worker, you have to pay the cost of the factory, whatever, electricity, maintenance, cleaning, whatever, even if you don't produce. Variable cost depends directly on the workers. So if you don't have any worker, you don't produce, you don't have any variable cost because you don't have workers, you don't have to pay any salary. But then you start paying the salary of each worker. Let's say each worker costs $10. Okay, 1 worker $10, 2 workers $20, 3 workers $30, and so on. So you see that the variable cost increases as long as you continue adding workers. Okay, so what is the total cost of inputs? It's the fixed plus the variable. So 30 plus 0 is 30. So this is the total cost if you don't produce anything, and production is 0. If you produce, if you have 1 worker produces 50 units, the total cost is the fixed and the variable. So 30 plus 10, 40. 30 plus 20, 50. 30 plus 30, 60. 30 plus 40, 70. So this is the total cost, and this is what you saw in the previous chart. Let's go to the next chart, and this is where you start adding the concept of average total cost. Average means that you have to divide the cost by the number of inputs, if you want. So let's say that this is the average fixed cost. It starts here at 3 and it goes down and decreases. I will show you in the next chart exactly how do you calculate each one. But conceptually you realize that the more you produce, so the more output you have, you have to divide the fixed cost. You have to divide by the number of output, the quantity, the cups of coffee per hour, if you want, in this case. So the average variable cost in this case is it grows in proportion to the number of workers. Remember that each worker adds the salary of the worker. So this is a straight line. In this case, in other cases it's not a straight line, but in this case it is. So the total average cost increases. So increases by is the addition of the average fixed cost plus the average variable cost. So this plus this gives you this. The marginal cost in this case increases. Remember in the previous chart that we saw how the company becomes more inefficient. The marginal cost goes up. So let me show you now in this chart exactly how do you build all these numbers. Here you have the production, the output, that is the quantity of cups per hour, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., etc. The total cost, it comes from the previous chart. Remember, the last column of the previous chart was fixed plus variable cost. You have here also fixed and variable. So this comes from the previous chart. Fixed is always $3. It doesn't change. Whether the factory is operating or not, you have to pay some salaries like a headcount or your premises or whatever, maintenance. Variable cost depends on the number of workers, remember? So each worker is 0.3. So here you have the total variable. So the total cost is fixed cost plus variable cost. So the average fixed cost is very simple. Is the fixed cost, that is 3, divided by the number of units. 3 divided by 1 is 3. 3 divided by 2 is 1.5. $3 fixed cost divided by 3 units of output is $1 per unit of output. So it's this divided by this. $3 of fixed cost divided by 4 units is give you 0.75 and so on. What is the average variable cost? Well, exactly the same. You have here the variable cost and you divide by the output. 0 divided by 0 doesn't give you anything. 30 cents divided by 1 is 30 cents. 80 cents divided by 2 is 40 cents. So it's the number, is the variable cost divided per unit. $1.5 divided by 3 units sold or produced, it gives you 1.5 divided by 3, it gives you 0.5 and so on. So what is the average total cost? This column plus this column. So the average fixed cost plus the average variable cost. So you see how it goes down and then starts going up. So it continues with just the addition of the two, which is what we saw in the previous slide. So what is the marginal cost then? Well, very easy. It's the difference between this and this. So marginal cost is, here is the difference between each total cost. Here it is the total cost. The total cost to produce 1 unit is $3. The total cost to produce, to produce 0 units is $3 because it's a fixed cost. So premises, whatever, you have to pay no matter whether you produce or not. But then to produce 1 unit is $3.30. So the difference between 3 and $3.30 is $0.30. Is the marginal cost from 0 to 1 unit. Here, if you instead of producing 1 unit, you produce 2 units, the total cost goes from 3.3 to 3.8. The difference is 0.5, you see? So you see how the marginal cost increases this way. It doesn't have to be a straight line, can be anything. In this particular case, in this example, it's a straight line, but that doesn't have to. It can be whatever. Okay, so the interesting thing here is that the most typical shape of these curves doesn't have to be like this, but most of the times it is. You see that average fixed cost, it goes down. Average variable cost, it goes like this, is U-shape. So the average total cost, that is the addition of this and this, is once again U-shape. The marginal cost, once again in this case, is U-shape. And not only that, but it touches each one of the curves in the point where, in the lowest point. You see, this is the lowest point of the average total cost. This is the lowest point of the average variable cost. This is the lowest point. In the case of the average fixed cost, you don't have any lowest point because it continues going down. So you see that these are all the curves, and these are the shapes of these curves. So this is the last slide, and with this we finish. What happens when we, instead of graphing the total cost, we graph the average total cost? And this is kind of interesting because this is done in a time horizon. I mean, it's done considering like different size of the factory. Let's say you have a small factory, and this is the average total cost. But then you increase the size of the total production of the factory. So the factory becomes more efficient, absorbs better the fixed cost. So consequently, the total average total cost goes down because the company is more efficient. So you have a larger plant. You have more economies of scales. So what happens if you continue expanding the plant? Instead of having, let's say here you had 10 workers with 1 machinery. Here you have 50 workers with 20 machineries. and here you have 400 workers with 300 machineries or whatever machines. So you see that there is a complete effect. At first, costs become more efficient because you absorb fixed costs. This is, you gain economies of scales, and then for a while you don't get any new economies of scales. So practically this long run curve is horizontal. It means that you don't gain efficiency, and then you start losing efficiency because you start having like conflicts. The factory gets too large. You start having sources of inefficiencies, conflicts between the different producers or the different machines, whatever. And instead of gaining economies of scale, you gain diseconomies of scale, and costs start to pick up again. So you see that this helps you to decide which is the ideal size of the factory. So clearly the ideal size must be on this zone here, on this region, because this is where you get the most efficient average total cost. This is it. So hope you understand and get familiar with these issues, and because they're important. I mean, for any discussion about strategy, you need to know these things. For international business, you need to know these things. So this is all these concepts are very, very important. Thank you very much, and let me know if you have any doubt.